recap to give to you. This one's in version 50, so I've been running V40 for a while, and then I made the switch to version 50 about two and a half weeks ago. So I've been running this for a while. I got this run like 3 days in, so there is quite a lot going on. Overall, there are some major differences between version 50 and V40. So they added artifice, there's different items in the game, like the egg is a big one. In this version specifically, there's a trick where you can switch to 30 frames a second, drop the egg while looking down, and then switch back to your normal frame rate. So eggs will never explode whenever you do that on flat ground. There's a few other techs I'll use throughout the run, but overall, most people would say version 50 is slower than V40, so it's not going to be as fast of a run, but still quite a good time to be happy with. I do think there is room for improvement. Whenever I had this run, I was on the tail end of being sick, and I just, wanted to run some 10 quota, and just had some amazing days later on. But let's get into the run. So our first 2 days are very fast, a good amount of money. The main name of the game is just being fast on these first quotas. I do a 4 assurance route. If I get a good jetpack sale, I'll switch to a 3 assurance route and go to Titan on quota 4. Otherwise, I'll just wait until quota 5. So that helps with oversell and just kind of minimizing that. But yeah, we go in, we get a bunch of loot. We have just like a lot of nearby items a lot of these days to fire exit, so that really helps out. We finished our first quota in 4 minutes and 30 seconds. That's one of the fastest I've ever had. In fact, since I've continued running it after having this run, I very rarely have a run faster than that for the first quota. To do that, you're pretty much always looking at a day 1 sell. Day 2 sells are almost always slower, at least if you're trying to take money into quota 2. A lot of times we do wind up getting turrets and other stuff. That'll be another thing that happens later on in the run is Titans on version 40 don't spawn any turrets, so V50 is a bit different with that. But going into our second quota to sell, we wind up selling 239. Pretty fast, not too bad. Again, we're doing these days quite fast. We're getting over 100 each day in assurance, which is lovely to see. The name of the game is honestly just be very fast, get quick inventories, not send maze too much whenever you don't need to, and just get out. That last quota 2 was an 11 minute and 45 seconds, which is, again, quite fast for quota 2. And again, I'm taking a lot of money into the next quotas. I typically divide quotas by assurances. So whenever you go to a different moon is whenever I mark a noticeable point. This was an interesting part. Another addition to version 50 is tulip snakes. There are a few. I'm just gonna let this play out. Oh no. One major problem I have with tulip snakes, and this many of them, is you need to be careful of fall damage, because whenever you jump out of the ship at the start, you take anywhere from 70 to 80 or 90 damage. If you fall too far, you might get crit, and you might even just die from falling too far. There's also a bug that happens where if you have tulip snakes on your head and you pull the lever as they start flapping and try to fly you away, they can glitch you into the ceiling and you just kind of insta-die from it. So very cool, very happy it didn't happen this run. But it's time for our Quota 3 sell. We sell everything, we check the terminal, and we find out that there's actually a jetpack sale. It's a small one, but with the 4 assurance route, a small one is all we need. Generally, we oversell by, I think it's like under 100 on average for each assurance. Like each 4 assurance route we do, so it's very little oversell. Here is the best day of assurances. We get an absolute ton of money. It's quite nearby fire. We take it, and we actually have enough where we can just skip every other day. So that's pretty great. Here we find 2 tulip snakes, which is, I would say 2 or 3 tulip snakes is probably the ideal amount. That way, rather than flying into the air, they'll actually lose some height. So once you get going, you can actually gain quite a lot of time if you have decent flying skills. So like there, I just flew all the way into the ship and I didn't really need any stamina for it, which is always nice. We order our jetpack, and we're gonna wait to collect it until we get to the company. So we're gonna just skip 2 days. We don't find any bees on either day, so we don't get any money collected, and we just go to the company to sell. After selling, we collect our jetpack, and we can start heading off to Titan. Once again, Titan is a bit different on version 50 than version 40. Loot is... You'll never have as good of loot as you could have on version 40, but it's more consistent. So what I mean by that is, I think the average is like, on average you might get like 1 item less, but you have that consistency where you can consistently get 400, 500 days on Titan. So unfortunately, our first day is eclipsed, and because it's the first day, I decide, you know what, there's a good chance I can get out with more items than just 3. And if I don't, the run is early enough where I don't really care. We wind up finding a Bracken, so our first sighting of him, surely he doesn't show up later. But we drop some items down, we grab the 3 remaining, we jetpack back to the ship, and fortunately, no enemies were a problem. Getting 485 on an eclipse day is absolutely incredible. Unfortunately, this day was not eclipsed, and it provided even less loot, so only 261. And we go in on day 3, and we get a mansion. Mansions are a bit interesting on V50. On version 40, you would typically just turn around and leave. They aren't worth your time. They're a lot larger. The loot is way too spread out. On version 50, you definitely can still just run in mansions and just start looting. Like, they aren't bad. Like, I would say they're just consistent most of the time. Here we only get 290, which is unfortunate. But we get enough for our Quota 5, and we take off. At this point, you might be thinking, that's not a lot of loot you've got. And you would be correct. Like, we are quite far behind on loot. We're 6 minutes ahead of my previous time, which was a 2:07. And, it's not looking super great. But fortunately, next quota can fix that. Something I have yet to mention is quota rules. This run had some alright quota rules. We were below average quotas by... overall, it winds up... The math adds up to about 350 below average, so it's below, not like the most below. But walking into a loot room and seeing 4 items, one of them being a lamp, lots of things, always love to see it. So we get a 702 day 1. Day 2 we enter in, we see, lovely stuff, hairdryers, some robot toys, just apparatus, just a lot of nice things. Apparatus can be a little sketchy because old birds were also added on version 50. I feel like I'm saying that a lot. And as long as we don't get one, we should be fine. Unfortunately, we do get one. But he stays out of sight long enough. He doesn't land on us as we jump to the ship. And we're able to get one inventory back. We actually wind up losing a toothpaste here, but I'm not too worried about it. Like, toothpaste is relatively cheap, and the run is not. So we're gonna just go with that. We wind up getting 518, which is pretty solid, and that leads us into our day 3. We enter in, we head to the right, we see a locker room. Locker rooms can be amazing. Unfortunately, this one has a turret in the corner, which tries to shoot us, and we can get out just barely. There was a locker on the other side, which had a painting and some whoopee cushions, but the turret was the main concern here, so we just try to get out as fast as possible and not take too much damage. As you can see, there are a number of turrets. These are just a thing on version 50 where it's just a million turrets. It's a turret day. Do what you can, work around them as much as you can. Entering fire and seeing a ton of loot is awesome. Seeing a turret is less awesome. It does take some time for those to turn and just kind of work around them. But we wind up getting our best day so far, a 912. Absolutely crazy. I think my PB on Titan for like most loot collected in a single day is like 1,000 or like 1,100. It is not a lot more than that. And getting one of those days in a run like this is just crazy. Here you can see there are more turrets, and we do not like it. Fortunately, there is a nearby loot room with a ton of loot. A lot of one-handeds, which is, you kind of hope for a good spread of ones and twos, but it's good enough. We head into fire, and we get another loot room with even more loot, so a pretty good day overall. Wind up getting 489. On day 2, we go in, and it's Mansion. Mansion, again, it's runnable on version 50. We try. This is the room everyone hopes to see. Kitchen, does it have good stuff? It is not the most. And yeah, we just kind of grab everything we can. We get out. We find our first signs of a spider. We don't see him, thankfully, but just kind of acknowledge the spider web and go loot everything. But that turned into a 640 day, which you would pretty much never get on the version 40. We encounter our Bracken again on day 3. We get a loot room in fire, and we just kind of explore for a little bit before heading out. This is my favorite little bit of tech on version 50. You can take off with items on the catwalk outside the ship, and the scan at the end of the day that gives you the report will actually be correct. On version 40, it was like a 50-50 chance whether or not it was actually counting and including everything, so I'm very happy that's patched in this version. Next up, we have Quota 8. We're getting towards the end of the run. At some point, we can decide to go Artifice. We get 257 on day 1, which is not that great. Day 2, we go in, we explore a bit. We see the landmine, and we get out. Heading into day 3, we are always looking for more money, and we find some right next to main. Here was an interesting spike trap. Had a whoopee under it. We typically want to get every item we can. A $6 whoopee is not worth my time. Heading into fire, we wind up just getting a lot of items just spaced out a lot. Just finding a lot of random items in different graded rooms. And it winds up being one of our other best days of the run, an 884. Absolutely absurd. After selling, I decide that we're a bit low on money. We need about 3,000 over the next 6 days, assuming we get about average quota rolls. So I decide to go to Artifice. I normally wait until later, that way we guaranteedly don't oversell. Technically, we can go Quota 8 as well, but I think Titan's faster. It's hard to tell because you can't take two-handeds back on Artifice, which is weird because we don't have cruiser in this version, so you have to jet everything back manually. So getting loot out of Artifice just kind of takes a while. Like, here I'm heading to fire at 2 p.m. It's a bit slower than we would like. After a close encounter with a nutcracker, I decide to leave, and we head out and wind up collecting 743, which is quite a good day. Like, on Titan, we only had 2 days above that on Titan. However, the good luck doesn't always continue. Wind up getting a bunch of landmines and some other shenanigans. There's a spider in the doorway. And after going all the way through main and fire, we wind up only collecting 371, which makes it a very slow day for efficiency-wise. Our last day of the quota, day 3, is actually a facility. Facilities can be absolutely insane for loot. You can get a ton of gold bars and lamps and stuff. Gold bars and still no two-handed, so no lamps. We wind up getting some weird placed items in the hallway, but, it's cool. Glad to get it. But after finding a mimic, I decide that's enough and start heading out. We wind up getting a 460 day on day 3, which was pretty good. Lootbug wants our loot, but too bad for him. I am right next to fire. Overall, though, that was roughly the same amount of loot we got on Quota 8 as Quota 9, except Quota 8 we were able to go Titan, and Quota 9 we were on Artifice. We got less loot than we got on Titan compared to Quota 6 and Quota 7, and the only quota we significantly beat on Artifice compared to Titan was our first quota of Quota 5. But going into the last quota, we have a 28-18 total. We need to collect about 1,500. Our Quota 9 split was almost 11 minutes ahead, which is absolutely insane. This is just a crazy day. Wind up collecting a bunch of stuff, and collect a total of 904. Day 2 has a mimic. Gotta love it. So we just instantly go to fire, and of course there's a beehive. Naturally. It's close enough where if we go in fire door, we might be able to get in, but if we start leaving, we wouldn't be able to. And there's also mud, so whenever we go to move it, we fall into the mud. It makes it quite difficult. Just kind of gotta love some time wasting at the end of a run. However, we get the BOA, and we can, at the very least, explore fire and get a little bit from this kitchen. The kitchen is kind of laughing at me because there's 2 lamps, a cash register, just so many two-handeds that I would love to take but just can't. But it worked out, and we wound up getting 317 that day. Going into the last day, we need just about 300. We find a kitchen. It is plenty enough, even though it's just a bunch of toothpaste and some other stuff. And once we jet all this back, we are good to sell. The total collected was 311 there. I think I wound up leaving a hairbrush just to save a little bit of time, as I knew I just had enough, assuming my spreadsheet wasn't wrong. And we begin selling. Come on, wake up. We finish selling, we run to the ship, we pull the lever, and we wait to see what time we get. If you'd like to catch me live, you can catch me here on twitch.tv/ZeroTaylor. I am trying to be live a lot, so I think over the past month I've been live 20 to 25 days or something, a good amount. I've been speedrunning V50 to try and improve this time, but I haven't got any improvements, and it's quite a good time. 1:54:15. That's world record by a few minutes, like 3 or 4 minutes at this point, as I'm making this video. If you're interested in the spreadsheet, I have it up on screen now. Overall, I think I said it before, but I'll say it again. We had about 350 below average quota rolls. The main time save in this run came down to the Titans. Titans were insane. I hope to get more of them. And I also hope to see you over on Twitch. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.